Or houses like Dior, they'll often add like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of godets into the hem of a skirt to make it massive so that when they walk it goes. But I'm just going to show you how to do a couple. So for this, you still want to pay attention to the shape of the waist of your skirt because you still want it to fit at the top, and there's not going to be all of that extra fabric that gets folded in to make it fit like you have with a pleat. So I'm actually going to draw in the shape of my dart, and then I'm going to have my first godet fall in line with my dart. So kind of like how we created our princess seam with our last garment, I'm going to draw in that extra fabric there, but then I'm just going to draw a straight line down for my first godet. So that can be my first pattern piece. And now I get to decide how high I want my godets to go. I'm gonna say I want them to be, I don't know, maybe 7 inches tall. So I'm gonna mark 7 inches right there. And then I can just draw seam allowance on this pattern. Why don't I put, let's say, one more godet in the front of this. So I'll measure this distance, measure that there, and then we'll put one in the side seam as well. And then we'll do 2 in the back. So you can see what happens. So, it's my center front. I'm not gonna add seam allowance. Center. We can start from the other side of our dart and take that extra piece out just like we did on our princess seam bodice. And draw downwards from there. And I want to make sure that these are the same length. And why don't we measure and see how long this is, and then we can try to make them slightly even. That's about 3 inches. How much do I have left? All right, I'm gonna make this one 2 inches just so that I can still have a little bit of a sliver of a side seam panel. So now, I'm just creating an extra line for my next godet. So I can just draw a line straight down. I also want to mark, however, well, actually, I'll remember 2 inches in my original pattern from the dart. Then I can add seam allowance all the way around because all of the edges are getting sewn to something.
These on one, or is that 2?
This is, there's going to be one godet in between here.
Oh, okay.
And there's going to be another one in between here. And there's going to be another one in the side seam. You guys might not know what I mean by godet yet, but you will see in a second. It's like a little pizza slice that you sew in between seams to make things wider. So I want to draw in the shape of my side seam because my skirt is still going to have hips to it and it still needs to be fitted all the way down until I get to the point of my godet. And then I can start to draw straight. And this can be a straight line because you're sewing it to another straight line, and I already took out my dart. Again, you want to make sure that these are the same length, but for the sake of time, I'm not gonna worry about it. And add your seam allowance, and mark the height of your godet, which is 7 inches. And then 7 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now we can do our pattern for our godet. I'll just do it in between these two pieces, which can be as wide or narrow as you want it to be. It just has to be the height of whatever you marked on your pattern. So we marked 7 inches. So I'm just gonna see what I can fit within this space on my pattern paper. 7 inches. And then you just go out like this, making sure that it stays 7 inches. How wide can I go? Let's go to about there. And then we can draft a slight curve to make sure that it stays 7 inches all the way around. Like that. And now we can measure this distance and do the other side, which is about 2.5 inches. So we can measure it over to here, about 2.5. Draw 7 inches down like this and draft our curve. And that's our godet, and now we can just add seam allowance to this. Now, one thing that we want to keep in mind with a pattern like this, I'm getting to a sharp corner and I'm trying to add seam allowance. If I just keep going up, it's going to get a lot longer, and I don't want that. So I'm going to do something called squaring my seam allowance, which means I'm going to measure 1/2 inch up from the tip and 1/2 inch down and create a little rectangle so that I know exactly where 1/2 inch above that corner is, and just square it off like that and measure another 1/2 inch down and over, so that way it doesn't just keep going and going and going, it stays at 1/2 inch. And so you end up with a rectangle at the top that's 1 inch going this way and 1/2 inch going that way. Does that make sense? I kind of just scribbled all over it, but you get the idea. And those are all the patterns I need for my front. Do you guys want me to do the back too?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I'll cut these out first and then I'll do the back. This is going to take me a little while, and you guys will probably get the same thing out of it. Sorry, I didn't match my side seam. Okay, ignore this. So I'm going to mark in my center back right here, and then I'm going to draw in one side of my dart like this, and then draw a straight line down, like that. Okay. And that becomes my pattern. And now I just measure once again 7 inches up, like this, and mark. And now I can add my seam allowance. But since this is my center back, I won't add seam allowance on that side because I'm not sewing it to anything. So that's one piece, and then I can do this side. I'll do this side up here so that these lines don't get in the way. And that's gonna match up my dots, my grain. Try my grain line. And I'll start by marking in the other side of the dart, like that. And the rest of my waistline, since I'm just going to do 2 goatees in the back. And then I can draw in my side seam. My hem, and draw a straight line up for the rest of this. And then once again, I'll just mark 7 inches up so that I know where my gote goes. Oh, I measured that from the edge, not the edge with seam allowance, so I marked it wrong. Ignore that. And then I'll draw seam allowance all the way around. And there you have it. Back, side, center, back. The shape of my gote stays the same all the way around, so I don't have to do another pattern for it. So I have all of my patterns, and I can start cutting and sewing it all together. Label it.
Why are we 3 for the front and 2 for the back?
That was just a design choice. Also, for the sake of time, I didn't want you guys to have to watch me make a million patterns. You could do 3 in the back and 3 in the front. You could do 4 in the front and none in the back. You can divide it up as much as you want.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And now I have something that looks like this. So what I'm going to do, need a scissor. I'm going to grab a pair of scissors. Like that. And now I can sew these 2 seams together because I have my fabric filled in like that. So I'm going to take my front side as number 2, where's front side number 1? Da-da. That's my back side. Front side number 1. So here's my dart. Got 1/2 inch of seam allowance. And I just sew all the way down as if my gote becomes the rest of my seam. So once I get closer to my gote, I I want to make sure that I don't see any of this excess. So I want to make sure that my stitch matches exactly with where that slit begins. Even maybe a little bit past it, like that. And now I can start to pivot and match these two pieces together. Like that. And you can start to see what happens. You get these little pizza slices that create fullness in your garment. So now there's a little bit of flounce at the hem of my skirt. And you just go around and around, same way. So before I sew my next seam, I'm going to sew on my godet first at 1/2 inch, matching it up with the notch. Then I can clamp. I don't know what that was, but I'll worry about it later. And then I can snip my seam allowance up to 1/2 inch right there, so I can push this out of the way and let my godet become the rest of my seam allowance. And now I have to find front side number 2, which is right here. So this is my side seam here, and this is the rest of my seam here. So I just match this up at the top. What's going on down there? Going down, 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 down. Until I get to my godet. I'm getting close to the point, so I'm just going to check and make sure that I sew just slightly past it, like that, and then I can start to match this up as if this were the rest of my side seam. I wasn't really walking my patterns, so some of the edges are... Yeah?
For the pleated dress, do we need to make the full dress or just half of it?
For both, you can just do half. For this and for the pleated skirt, you can just do 1/2. If you want to do a whole one, you can, but I'm not going to make you because I know you guys have samples to do as well. And now, here's my center back. This is my dart, so I'm going to match these two together.
好开心啊，都做完了。停吧，前面的。